An alien armada advanced, but one human warship blocked the stars. The last stand, Captain. Jake Miller stood on the bridge of the Terra's Fury, watching the scanner display with grim determination. 3,000 alien ships filled the void ahead, their dark hulls blotting out the stars like a plague of metal locusts. Behind him, Earth's final evacuation ships were still climbing out of the gravity well, packed with civilians fleeing humanity's dying homeworld. Captain, the enemy fleet will reach firing range in 12 minutes, reported Lieutenant Rosa Martinez from the weapons station. Her voice remained steady despite the impossible odds. The Terra's Fury was humanity's most advanced warship, but it was still just one vessel against an armada that had already crushed 6 human colonies. The alien Vex Empire had come without warning, their black ships emerging from hyperspace like death itself. Their technology was superior, their numbers overwhelming. Planet after planet had fallen in mere hours. Now only Earth remained, and the Fury was all that stood between 3 billion evacuees and certain death. Sir, Admiral Davis is requesting communication from the evacuation fleet, called out Communications Officer Tom Reed. Put him through, Jake ordered, never taking his eyes off the approaching armada. The weathered face of Admiral Davis appeared on the main screen, strain visible. In every line, Jake, you need to fall back. We can't lose our best ship for a symbolic gesture. With respect, Admiral, this isn't symbolic, Jake replied. Those civilian ships need another 40 minutes to clear the system. We hold here or they all die. One ship can't stop 3,000, Captain. It's suicide. Jake turned to face his crew, 43 souls who had volunteered to stay behind. Each one could have taken a place on the evacuation ships. Each one had chosen to stand and fight instead. Maybe one ship can't stop them, Admiral, but one ship can slow them down. The connection ended. Around the bridge, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. Chief Engineer Bill Hayes reported from the engine room that all systems were running at peak performance. The ship's experimental weapons were charged and ready. The Fury represented the best of human engineering, built in secret over 5 years as humanity's ace in the hole. Incoming transmission from the alien fleet, Tom announced. Let's hear what they have to say, Jake said. The screen filled with the image of a tall insectoid creature with compound eyes and clicking mandibles. The Vex commander spoke in perfect cold English. Human vessel, you are vastly outnumbered. Surrender now and your death will be swift. Jake stepped forward. This is Captain Jake Miller of the Human Defense Force. You on Earth? You'll have to go through us first. The alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Your species' arrogance is remarkable. We have conquered 100 worlds. What can one small ship accomplish against the might of the Vex Armada? You're about to find out, Jake replied, cutting the transmission. He turned to his crew. These weren't the heroes of old stories. They were ordinary people who had chosen to do something extraordinary. Rosa had been a mining engineer before the war. Tom had taught school on Mars. Bill had fixed cargo haulers in the asteroid belt. Now they were humanity's last hope. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's intercom. In 8 minutes, we engage the enemy. We're not going to lie to ourselves about our chances. But behind us are 3 billion human souls counting on us to buy them time. Today, we show the galaxy what humans are made of. The crew worked in focused silence, each person knowing their role. The Fury began moving forward, a single bright spark advancing toward an ocean of darkness. Its experimental fusion engines burned brighter than any human ship before, and its prototype weapons hummed with barely contained energy. Captain, the evacuation fleet reports they're at 60% capacity for the hyperspace jump. Tom called out. Understood. Maintain course. Jake settled into his command chair. All weapons, prepare to fire on my mark. The alien armada continued its advance, confident in its overwhelming superiority. They had faced human resistance before and crushed it easily. This would be no different. The humans were weak, their technology primitive, their tactics predictable, but they had never faced The Terra's fury. They had never faced humans who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. As the distance closed, Jake felt a strange calm settle over him. Win or lose, they would make the aliens remember this day. Range in 30 seconds, Captain, Rosa reported. Jake gripped his chair arms. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as one human warship prepared to challenge the darkness. First blood. The first exchange of fire lit up the void like a supernova. The Terra's fury unleashed everything it had: plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and the prototype graviton, pulse weapon that Earth scientists had built in desperate secrecy. The experimental weapon tore through space, warping reality itself as it struck the leading edge of the Vex Armada. 20 alien ships simply vanished, crushed into nothing by the gravitational anomaly. Another 50 were crippled, their hulls cracked open like eggs, spilling atmosphere and crew into the vacuum. The remaining Vex ships recoiled in shock, their perfect formation breaking as they tried to comprehend what had just happened. Direct hit on their command cluster, Rosa reported, her voice tight with excitement. Enemy formation is in disarray. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Vex quickly recovered, spreading into a wide attacking formation that surrounded the lone human ship. Thousands of energy beams lanced through space, turning the area around the Fury into a deadly light show. Shields at 70%, called out Lieutenant Dan Foster from the engineering station. Hull temperature rising but holding steady. The Fury spun and weaved through the alien fire with impossible grace. Chief Engineer Bill Hayes had modified the ship's engines beyond all safety limits, giving it acceleration that would crush a normal crew. But the Fury's crew wore experimental acceleration suits that let them survive maneuvers no human ship had ever attempted. Coming about for another pass, Jake announced. Target their heavy cruisers. We need to break their backbone. The ship dove toward a cluster of massive Vex vessels, each one 3 times the size of the Fury. These were the ships that had bombarded human colonies from orbit, turning cities into glass and ash. Now they found themselves face to face with humanity's. The Rosa fired everything they had. The Fury's experimental weapons systems had been designed for exactly this moment. Not to fight a fair battle, but to punch far above their weight. Quantum torpedoes phased through the aliens' shields, detonating inside their hulls. Plasma beams, superheated beyond anything the Vex had seen, cut through their armor like paper. One of the huge cruisers broke apart, its reactor going critical in a flash that outshone nearby stars. The explosion took 2 more ships with it, and the shockwave sent others tumbling out of formation. Impossible, the Vex commander's voice crackled over the radio. Your weapons should not be able to penetrate our defenses. Surprise, Jake muttered, then opened the channel. You came to destroy humanity. Did you really think we wouldn't have surprises waiting? The Vex response was immediate and brutal. The entire armada focused fire on the Fury, thousands of weapons trying to swat the annoying human ship out of existence. The space around them became a storm of energy and metal, with the small human vessel dancing through it like a leaf in a hurricane. Shields down to 40%, Dan reported. Port armor is showing stress fractures. How much time do the evacuation ships need? Jake asked. Tom checked his readings. 28 minutes until they can jump to hyperspace, Captain. 28 minutes. Jake looked at the tactical display. They had destroyed maybe 100 alien ships, but nearly 3,000 remained. The Fury was fast and deadly, but it couldn't keep this up forever. Already the aliens were adapting their tactics, trying to box the human ship in. Sir, I'm reading massive energy buildup from their flagship, Rosa warned. They're charging. Some kind of superweapon. Jake saw it on the display, a ship the size of a city bristling with weapons that could crack a planet. The Vex had decided to end this quickly. They were preparing to fire their planet-killer weapon at the small, human ship. All power to engines, Jake ordered. We're going to ram their flagship. The crew didn't question the order. They had known from the start this was a one-way mission. If they could take out the Vex command ship, it might buy the evacuees even more time. The Fury accelerated toward the alien flagship, dodging fire from hundreds of escort vessels. The Vex superweapon was almost ready to fire, its barrel glowing with enough energy to vaporize a moon. "Captain," Tom called out. "Message from the evacuation fleet. Admiral Davis wants to know our status." Jake smiled grimly as explosions rocked the ship around them. "Tell the Admiral we're just getting started." The race was on. Could the Fury reach the flagship before the superweapon fired? And even if they did, could one ship really make a difference against such overwhelming odds? The swarm unleashed. The Fury screamed toward the alien flagship, its engines pushed beyond every safety limit. Around them, space filled with enemy fire as the entire Vex armada tried to stop the charging human ship. But Jake had one more surprise. For them. "Bill, activate the swarm protocol," Jake ordered. From hidden bays along the Fury's hull, thousands of small objects shot into space. They looked like metal spheres, each no bigger than a basketball. The Vex dismissed them at first. What could such tiny objects do against their mighty warships? They learned the answer quickly. Each sphere was a miniature AI-controlled fighter, packed with a small but powerful warhead. The human military had called them Hornets during testing. Now, 3,000 of them swarmed toward the alien fleet like angry insects. The Hornets were too small and fast for the Vex's main weapons to target effectively. They zipped between the massive alien ships, seeking out weak points, engine exhausts, weapon ports, sensor arrays. When they found their targets, they detonated with focused nuclear fury. Explosions began rippling through the Vex formation. A heavy cruiser lost its main engines and began spinning helplessly. A destroyer's weapons went offline as Hornets took out its gun turrets one by one. The perfect order of the alien armada collapsed into chaos as they tried to swat thousands of tiny attackers. "Hornet swarm is performing better than expected," Rosa reported, watching her tactical display with amazement. Enemy formation integrity down to 40%. But the flagship was still charging its superweapon, and the Fury was still racing toward it. The massive alien ship began firing everything it had at the approaching human vessel. Energy beams, thick as buildings, lanced through space, each one capable of destroying a city. "Evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered, though he knew there was little room to dodge. The flagship's weapons were too big, too numerous. One beam clipped the Fury's port side, tearing away armor plating and venting atmosphere. Another passed close enough to overload half their sensor array. But still the ship pressed forward, its human crew refusing to yield. 15 kilometers to target, Dan called out. "Hull integrity at 60% and falling." "Sir, the evacuation fleet reports 17 minutes until jump capability," Tom added. Jake gritted his teeth. 17 minutes might as well be 17 hours. The flagship's superweapon was almost ready to fire, and when it did, the Fury would be vaporized. But if they could ram the command ship before that happened... "Wait," Rosa suddenly called out. "Captain, I'm reading something strange. The flagship's superweapon. It's not aimed at us." Jake looked at the tactical display and felt his blood turn to ice. The massive weapon was pointing toward Earth, toward the evacuation ships still climbing desperately toward hyperspace jump. "Distance. They're going to fire on the civilians," he whispered. Then louder, "All power to weapons, we have to stop that shot." The Fury opened fire with everything it had left. Quantum torpedoes slammed into the flagship's hull, tearing massive craters in its armor. Plasma beams cut deep wounds across its surface. But the ship was simply too big, too heavily armored. The human weapons were like bee stings against an elephant. 10 seconds until they fire, Rosa reported. Jake made a decision that would haunt him forever. "Bill, overload the reactor. Set it for maximum yield." The chief engineer's face went pale. "Captain, that will..." "I know what it will do. Just do it." Throughout the ship, alarms began blaring as the fusion reactor built toward critical overload. The Fury had become a flying bomb, racing toward the heart of the alien flagship. If they could get close enough before the reactor exploded, they might be able to damage the superweapon. 5 seconds to enemy fire, Rosa announced. 3 seconds to reactor overload, Bill added. Jake looked around his bridge one last time. His crew sat at their stations, calm and focused even as death approached. They had done the impossible. One ship had stood against 3,000 and actually hurt them. Maybe it would be enough. "It's been an honor serving with you all," Jake said quietly. The flagship's superweapon began to fire, its beam cutting through space toward the helpless evacuation ships. At the same moment, the Fury's reactor reached critical mass. The explosion, when it came, was visible from Earth itself, a new star blooming in the darkness, burning brighter than the sun for one brilliant moment. The shockwave raced outward, carrying with it the hopes and courage of 43 humans who had refused to surrender. But had their sacrifice been enough? The tide turns. The explosion of the Terra's fury lit up the solar system like a second sun. When the blinding flash faded, the Vex flagship was gone. Not destroyed, but split cleanly in half, its massive bulk tumbling through space in two burning pieces. The superweapon that would have killed millions of evacuees was now scrap metal drifting in the void. But the human ship's sacrifice had done more than destroy one enemy vessel. The reactor overload had created an electromagnetic pulse that rippled through the Vex fleet, shorting out electronics and disrupting their coordination. Ships that had moved in perfect formation now drifted helplessly, their crews struggling to restore power. Admiral Davis watched from the bridge of the evacuation flagship New Hope, his weathered face streaked with tears. Around him, 3 billion humans waited in cargo bays and passenger compartments, packed into every available space on the fleeing ships. They had all seen the explosion, all understood what it meant. "Sir," his communications officer reported quietly, "we're receiving a signal from the debris field." Davis looked up in shock. "From the Fury?" "No, sir. It's coming from the Hornet swarm." On the main screen, a grainy image appeared, the bridge of the Terra's Fury, recorded moments before the ship's destruction. Captain Jake Miller's face filled the display, calm and determined even in his final moments. "If you're seeing this, then we didn't make it," Jake's recorded voice said. "But maybe we gave you something more valuable than our lives. The Hornets aren't just weapons, they're also recorders. Every one of them has been mapping Vex ship designs, weapon systems, shield frequencies, everything you need to fight back." The SUR recording flickered, then continued. "The Vex think they're superior because they've conquered 100 worlds. But they've never faced humans who refuse to stay conquered. Use what we've learned. Make them pay for every system, every planet, every life. Show them that humanity doesn't break." The message ended, but its impact was immediate. Throughout the evacuation fleet, the Hornet data was being analyzed by human scientists and military officers. What they found changed everything. Dr. Lisa Park, humanity's leading xenotechnology expert, worked frantically at her console aboard the New Hope. "Admiral, this is incredible," she called out. "The Vex aren't as advanced as we thought. Their shields operate on a narrow frequency band. Their hull armor has a crystalline structure that resonates at specific frequencies. We can hurt them, really hurt them." But even as hope flickered to life, the Vex fleet was recovering. Ship by ship, their systems came back online. The remaining 3,000 vessels began reforming their battle lines, preparing to finish what they had started. "Sir, enemy fleet is moving toward us again," the tactical officer reported. 12 minutes until they're in firing range. Davis made a decision that would echo through history. "Send a fleet-wide transmission. All ships capable of combat, prepare to engage the enemy." His staff looked at him in shock. "Admiral, these are civilian vessels. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining ships. They're human ships," Davis corrected. "And every one of them has seen what the Fury accomplished. Send the transmission." The message went out across the evacuation fleet, carrying with it the tactical data purchased with 43 lives. On ship after ship, crews made impossible choices. The cargo vessel, Iron Mountain, dumped its load of rare metals to make room for improvised weapons. The passenger liner Stellar Dream converted its industrial fabricators into torpedo launchers. Even the agricultural ship Green Fields found ways to weaponize its equipment. "Admiral," Dr. Park announced, "I can modify our shield generators to Match the frequency data from the Hornets. It won't make us invulnerable, but it should give us a fighting chance. Across the fleet, human ingenuity worked miracles. Ships that had never been designed for combat transformed themselves into weapons of war. The miners knew how to use explosive charges. The engineers understood ship systems better than anyone. The farmers had chemicals that could become deadly when mixed properly. When the Vex fleet came within range, they expected to find helpless civilian ships fleeing in panic. Instead, they found 300 human vessels turning to face them, their crews ready to fight with everything they had. The first exchange of fire was devastating for both sides. Human ships, improvised and fragile, died by the dozens, but they took Vex vessels with them, using their new knowledge of alien technology to strike at weak points the enemy had never thought to defend. "For the Fury!" someone shouted over the communications channel, and the cry was taken up by ship after ship. The tide of battle was turning, bought with blood and sacrifice. Victory's price. The battle raged for 3 hours, a desperate dance of death among the stars. Human ships, cobbled together from civilian vessels and mining equipment, threw themselves against the Vex armada with reckless courage. The aliens had superior technology, but humanity had something they couldn't understand: the refusal to surrender even when defeat seemed certain. Admiral Davis coordinated the fight from the New Hope, watching as ship after ship made the ultimate sacrifice. The cargo hauler Mountain Pride rammed a Vex destroyer, her captain shouting defiance until the end. The mining vessel Deep Digger used her industrial lasers to cut through alien armor, holding her position until enemy fire tore her apart. But, slowly, impossibly, the humans began to win. Dr. Park's shield modifications worked better than anyone had dared hope. The tactical data from the Hornets revealed weak points in every class of Vex ship. Most importantly, the aliens were learning what humanity meant when they said they would never surrender. "Sir, the enemy is breaking off," the tactical officer reported, hardly believing his own words. "Their remaining ships are retreating." Davis looked at the tactical display with exhaustion and pride. Of the 3,000 Vex ships that had attacked Earth, fewer than 800 remained. The human fleet had paid a terrible price. Over half their vessels were gone, but they had done the impossible. They had beaten the armada that had conquered 100 worlds. But the cost... Davis closed his eyes as the casualty reports came in. Nearly 1 million humans had died in the battle, civilians who had become warriors in humanity's darkest hour. The Terra's Fury and her crew were just the beginning of a list that would fill volumes. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Vex. Fleet," communications reported. The main screen filled with the image of the same insectoid commander who had spoken to Captain Miller hours before. But now the aliens' compound eyes held something that hadn't been there earlier. "Fear, human admiral," the Vex commander said, his translated voice no longer carrying its earlier arrogance. "We acknowledge your victory. We will withdraw from this system." Davis stepped forward, feeling the weight of command and loss. "Not good enough. You came here to destroy us. You've killed our people, burned our worlds. Why should we let you leave to attack someone else?" The alien's mandibles clicked nervously. "What do you want?" "Reparations," Davis said firmly. "Technology transfers and a promise the Vex Empire will never attack another human settlement." "Impossible. The Empire does not negotiate with inferior." "Choose your next words carefully," Davis interrupted. "We've just proven we're not inferior. We're something you've never encountered before. Humans who refuse to break. Make the deal, or we'll finish what the Fury started." The Vex commander was silent for long moments, clearly communicating with his superiors. Finally, he spoke again. "The Empire accepts your terms." As the alien fleet limped away into hyperspace, carrying word of humanity's impossible victory, Davis felt no triumph, only exhaustion and the weight of all those who had died. But something else too: hope. The galaxy would know now that humanity couldn't be conquered, that humans would fight impossible odds and somehow find a way to win. 3 months later, a memorial was unveiled on New Terra, humanity's new capital world. At its center stood a statue of the Terra's Fury, captured in her final moments as she raced toward the enemy flagship. Around the base were inscribed the names of all who had died, not just the 43 heroes of the Fury, but every human who had fallen in the battle. The inscription at the bottom was simple. They stood between darkness and light and would not yield. But perhaps the real memorial was what came after. The Vex kept their word, providing technology and resources to help humanity rebuild. Other alien species, hearing of the battle, approached with offers of alliance rather than conquest. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about humanity that day. The humans, for their part, built new ships and trained new crews. The Terra's Fury class of warships became the backbone of the human defense force, each one named for someone who had died in the great battle. But the first and greatest would always be remembered as the ship that stood alone against the stars and refused to break. In the end, Captain Jake Miller and his crew had done more than buy time for the evacuation fleet. They had shown the galaxy what humans were truly capable of when pushed to the wall. They had proven that sometimes one ship really could make all the difference. The stars themselves would remember their sacrifice,